Welcome in, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and we've got an expert here to help break it all down.
Yeah, really excited to dig into this one. I mean, his approach to entrepreneurship and time, it's really unique, especially given his background.
Yeah, not your typical entrepreneurial origin story. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking shoplifting as a kid, group homes, even some time in jail. His early life was a bit of a whirlwind. But here's where it gets really interesting. A simple question from a jail guard, "Why are you here?" kind of sparked something in him.
A real turning point, right? That self-reflection led him to recognize his potential and then stumbling onto an old Java programming book that was like a lifeline for him. The structured world of programming appealed to him because it offered predictable outcomes, unlike the chaos he was used to.
And so at just 18, he jumps headfirst into the entrepreneurial world, launching his first venture. Driven by that get shit done mentality, he's working 15, sometimes 18-hour days. He achieves success quickly, but at a cost. This leads us to some research out of UC Berkeley that really makes you think.
This study found that entrepreneurs are way more likely to face mental health challenges like depression and ADHD. It really challenges that hustle at all costs narrative and raises some important questions about achieving success without burning out.
And that brings us to the core of Martell's philosophy, the buyback principle. It's all about figuring out those few high-impact tasks where you excel and outsourcing everything else.
It's almost like hiring strategically, not just to expand your business, but to buy back your time, your most valuable asset.
Right. He illustrates this through the story of Stuart, a founder who was completely overwhelmed, working himself to the bone.
Panic attacks on the verge of a breakdown. Until he stumbled upon this buyback principle and the results were incredible, his business actually took off as he gained control of his time and focused on his strengths. So how do we identify those high-value activities in our own lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where Martell throws a curveball. He introduces this concept of chaos addiction. The idea that entrepreneurs who thrive in chaos can actually develop a subconscious craving for it, leading them down a path of self-sabotage.
Interesting, right? And then he goes on to describe these five-time assassins patterns of behavior that steal our time without us even realizing it.
He calls them the staller, the speed demon, the supervisor, the saver, and the self-medicator. Each archetype has examples that we can all relate to. It makes you really examine your own habits.
Definitely. And that self-awareness is crucial. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to breaking free. And then he gives us this visual tool to work with, the Diopri matrix, a way to categorize tasks based on how much energy they drain and what their financial return is.
I love a good visual.
Yeah.
And to illustrate, let's look at Oprah Winfrey. Initially, she was a news reporter, a role that would fall under the delegation quadrant of the DRP matrix. But her transition to hosting her own talk show shifted her into the production quadrant, a high-impact activity that she was passionate about.
And that shift aligns perfectly with the idea of the buyback rate. Knowing your hourly worth makes it crystal clear what to delegate. Any task that falls below your buyback rate should be outsourced.
Makes sense. But Martell goes a step further. He emphasizes building systems, not just setting goals.
He uses McDonald's as a great analogy. Their success wasn't just about delicious burgers, it was about their system, the speedy service system, a system that enabled them to replicate their success consistently.
That leads us to the idea of playbooks, standard operating procedures that document how to do things. This allows for scaling and frees up the entrepreneur from constantly having to explain everything.
He even offers a practical tip, the camcorder method. Record yourself performing a task and then have someone else turn that into a playbook, capturing your expertise and creating a repeatable process.
Brilliant. And from there, we arrive at the replacement ladder, a framework for making strategic hires.
Picture a ladder where each rung represents a key hire that allows you to delegate as your business expands. And the first rung, often overlooked, is the administrative assistant.
Right. Martell tackles the common objection, "I'm too small for an assistant," head on. He points out that even in the early stages, entrepreneurs waste valuable time on tasks an assistant could easily manage.
He even brings up Richard Branson, a billionaire who still relies on the support of an assistant. It's not just about tasks, it's about control.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And then he introduces this fascinating concept called the email GPS, a system for managing email efficiently, allowing you to detach from the constant influx of messages.
Freedom from the inbox. And to help us navigate the chaos, Martell offers a series of insightful time hacks that often challenge conventional thinking.
Like don't empower, enable. He suggests that giving specific instructions can actually stifle creativity and create dependence.
Interesting, right. And then there's the definition of done, being crystal clear about what constitutes finished when delegating a task. It eliminates ambiguity and prevents unnecessary rework.
And then my favorite, well, 1.3.1 rule, for every problem, require 3 potential solutions and a recommendation. This cultivates problem-solving skills in your team.
A brilliant way to empower your team and free up your own time. Now, Martell encourages us to take all this a step further, to craft a 10x vision. This goes beyond business goals. It encompasses your team, your empire, and even your lifestyle, thinking exponentially, envisioning tenfold achievements.
And that grand vision needs to be translated into action. That's where the preloaded year comes in. Planning your year strategically. Prioritizing the 3 to 5 activities that will have the greatest impact. Scheduling those big rocks first and protecting those time blocks fiercely.
Because there's always room for the pebbles, sand, and water of life once those big rocks are in place.
Exactly. And speaking of those smaller things, let's not forget the power of non-effort time. Those seemingly insignificant moments that often slip away. Commuting, running errands, even doing housework. Martell suggests leveraging these moments to engage in activities that nourish our minds or contribute to our goals.
Transforming wasted time into valuable opportunities. It's about maximizing every minute. And while all this planning might sound rigid, Martell argues that structure can actually enhance creativity.
It's like clearing the clutter from our minds. Right. When we're not constantly juggling priorities and remembering tasks, we create space for inspiration and innovation to flow.
Precisely. Make time for activities that spark your creativity. Those art classes for the mind that fuel your passions and keep you sharp.
Finding that balance between structured planning and those activities that foster innovation, that's the sweet spot. And delegation plays a crucial role in all of this. But Martell challenges the traditional notion of empowerment, suggesting it can sometimes backfire, creating more work for the entrepreneur.
Instead of simply empowering our teams, he advocates for enabling them, providing clear instructions, outlining expectations, and establishing well-defined systems.
Setting them up for success. And open communication is paramount. He emphasizes engaging in clearing conversations, addressing issues directly and respectfully, even when it's uncomfortable.
Creating a safe space for feedback, where team members feel comfortable sharing their perspectives without fear of reprisal. He introduces the clear framework for navigating these conversations, creating a welcoming atmosphere, guiding the person towards offering critical feedback, empathizing with their perspective, asking if there's more they wish to share, and then thoughtfully rejecting or accepting the feedback provided.
Feedback as a two-way street leaders must be receptive to feedback from their team, even if it's not always positive.
It's about humility, a willingness to learn and grow.
And all of this leads to a discussion about retaining top talent. Employee turnover can be incredibly costly.
Disrupting workflow, losing valuable knowledge, skills, and relationships.
Martell suggests fostering a culture of feedback and development as a key strategy for keeping your best employees.
Investing in your team, providing opportunities for growth, creating an environment where they feel valued, appreciated, and challenged.
He leads by example. He shares how the executive team at his own company engages in a quarterly feedback exercise, providing each other with constructive criticism, highlighting both strengths and areas for improvement.
Transparency and continuous growth. And then he brings it all back to the importance of passion, aligning our work with our values, finding that sweet spot where our talents meet our enthusiasm.
He tells this remarkable story about his friend Dave Crisco, who essentially gifted his business to 2 of his employees who were passionate about creating an online gaming platform for children. That platform became the wildly successful Club Penguin, later acquired by Disney.
A powerful example of how aligning efforts with passions can lead to extraordinary outcomes.
Finding your zone of genius. And he even challenges us to take a step back and honestly assess whether our current roles or businesses truly resonate with our passions.
Maybe it's time for a shift.
And here's a crucial aspect that's often overlooked: applying the buyback principle to our personal lives. It's not just about reclaiming time in our businesses. It's about using those same principles to create a more balanced and fulfilling life overall.
He shares how he implemented the buyback principle at home, going so far as to hire a house manager to handle tasks that were draining his time and energy.
Thinking outside the box.
Right. He encourages us to value our personal time as much as our business time, to see outsourcing household chores or errands as an investment in our well-being, not something to feel guilty about.
Freeing up time and energy to focus on what truly matters. Spending quality time with loved ones. Pursuing passions. simply savoring life.
He even highlights the ripple effect of these choices. When we hire someone to handle tasks we dislike, we're not just freeing up our own time, we're providing someone else with a job, a win-win situation.
Absolutely. And then he challenges the traditional concept of retirement, arguing that by effectively applying the buyback principle, we can create lives we don't need to retire from.
Retirement shouldn't be about escaping work. It should be about designing a life that integrates work passions and personal fulfillment.
Creating a life you love, not just waiting for the day you can stop working. And his life is a perfect example of this.
He's built successful businesses, cultivated meaningful relationships, pursued his passions, and continues to find joy and fulfillment in his work.
Living proof that the buyback principle can transform not just our schedules, but our entire lives.
He leaves us with a powerful call to action. Dream big, get clear, and plan your year.
Turning aspirations into concrete plans,
Yeah.
actionable steps.
Don't just read the book, apply it. Take action to reclaim your time and invest it in a life that reflects your values and priorities.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I hope it's inspired you to take action. You have more control over your time than you realize.
The buyback principle is more than just time management. It's a mindset shift, recognizing your worth, understanding your priorities, making conscious choices about how you spend your most valuable resource, your time.
Creating a life that reflects your values, your aspirations, your passions. We've explored a lot of insightful strategies and concepts, but it all boils down to one key takeaway. You have the power to create a life that reflects your vision and values. Don't let time slip away. Reclaim it, cherish it, and invest it wisely.
Now, before we wrap up part one of our deep dive, there's a crucial aspect we need to address: the emotional and psychological side of buying back your time.
That's an excellent point. It's not just about implementing systems and delegating tasks. There's an internal shift that needs to happen as well.
Right. Many entrepreneurs struggle with guilt or inadequacy when they start outsourcing or delegating. They feel like they should be able to handle everything themselves, that asking for help is a sign of weakness.
It's almost like this societal pressure that tells entrepreneurs they need to constantly be hustling, sacrificing their personal lives for their businesses.
And Martell pushes back against that narrative. He argues that a well-rounded, fulfilling life actually enhances entrepreneurial success.
When you prioritize your well-being, physically, emotionally, mentally, you become a better leader, a more creative thinker, a more resilient individual.
You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Exactly. Neglecting your needs impacts every area of your life, including your business.
He reframes self-care as an investment, not an indulgence. It's about creating a sustainable lifestyle that supports both personal and professional goals.
And this ties back to the investment quadrant of the DRUP matrix. Those activities that nourish our souls, build relationships, foster creativity, those aren't optional. They're essential.
Recognizing that investing in ourselves is just as important as investing in our businesses.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole issue of setting boundaries, which can be especially challenging for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their work and constantly bombarded with demands.
He offers some practical strategies for establishing those boundaries. Setting designated work hours, creating a dedicated workspace, learning to say no to requests that don't align with your priorities.
Protecting your time.
He even suggests creating a not-to-do list, a list of activities you consciously avoid to free up time and energy for the things that truly matter. It's about proactively managing your time instead of just reacting to whatever comes your way.
Taking charge. Now, I know some listeners might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I'm already overwhelmed. I don't have time for all this.
And that's a valid feeling. But remember Martell's core message. You have more time than you think.
It's about making deliberate choices.
Prioritizing those activities that align with your vision and values.
He recommends identifying your one thing, that single activity that, if done consistently, would have the most significant impact on your business or personal life.
And then block out time in your schedule to dedicate to that one thing. Treat it like an unbreakable appointment.
Incremental changes that compound over time.
He encourages embracing a mindset of continuous improvement. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress every day.
And he quotes the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end.
Growth and progress are ongoing processes. There will be setbacks. There will be challenges. But the key is to keep moving forward. Keep learning. Keep refining your approach.
He advocates for this test and learn approach, experimenting with different strategies, adapting, adjusting based on results, seeing failure not as a setback, but as a learning opportunity.
Buy Back Your Time is more than just a time management book. It's a guide to designing a life filled with intention, purpose, and fulfillment. It's about reclaiming your time and investing it in a way that aligns with your passions, your values, your aspirations.
Creating a life you don't need to escape from.
Exactly. What really stood out to me was how Martell weaves together practical advice, inspiring stories, and this overarching message of reclaiming our time and living more fulfilling lives.
It all boils down to one essential truth. You have the power to create a life that reflects your vision and values. Don't let time slip away. Reclaim it, cherish it, and invest it wisely.
Now let's transition to part two, where we'll distill all these valuable insights into a concise 10-point summary for you. Okay, so ready to break down the essence of buy back your time into 10 actionable takeaways.
Absolutely. Let's condense all this wisdom into like a potent formula for reclaiming our time and living more intentionally.
Sounds like a plan. All right, so first and foremost, we got to embrace that buyback principle, right? Figure out those high-impact tasks where you really shine and delegate or outsource everything else.
Right.
Remember, you're not just hiring to grow your business, you're hiring to buy back your time.
Right. That precious time. Okay, what's next?
Next, we got to confront those sneaky time assassins, those patterns of behavior that rob us of our time. Procrastination, perfectionism, the need to control everything, recognize them, and kick them to the curb.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Okay, so we've identified those time-wasting habits. Now what?
Now we bring in the DIP matrix. Remember that visual tool we talked about? Categorize your activities based on how much energy they zap and what their financial return is. Focus on those high-impact tasks that energize you, and delegate or outsource those that drain you.
Love it. A practical framework.
Okay.
And do we talk about the buyback rate too? How does that fit in?
Absolutely. Knowing your hourly worth is key. If a task costs less than your hourly rate to complete, it's a prime candidate for delegation. And here's another crucial shift. Focus on building systems, not just setting goals.
Systems over goals. Interesting. Can you elaborate on that?
Think about McDonald's and their speedy service system. Their success wasn't just about yummy burgers. It was about having a system in place that enabled them to replicate that success consistently.
Gotcha. So it's about creating repeatable processes. Okay, how do we actually do that?
Playbooks, my friend. Those trusty standard operating procedures document your processes so you can empower your team and free yourself from constantly having to explain everything.
Playbooks love it. What else?
All right, so as your business grows, you'll need to make strategic hires to keep up. And for that, we have the replacement ladder. Think of it as a guide to delegating responsibilities effectively.
Right. Each rung on the ladder represents a key hire. Okay, so where do we start?
The first rung, often overlooked, is the administrative assistant. Even in the early stages, entrepreneurs can benefit from having someone handle those administrative tasks.
It's about freeing up your mental space for the bigger picture stuff.
Exactly. And remember, even Richard Branson, a billionaire, still values the support of an assistant. It's not about being too small for help. It's about maximizing your time and energy.
Makes sense. What other nuggets of wisdom did Martell share?
Oh, he's got a whole toolbox of time hacks.
Yeah.
Remember, don't empower, enable. Provide clear instructions and systems, but give your team the freedom to find their own solutions.
Right. Trusting them to do their thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can't forget the definition of done. Being super clear about what finished looks like when delegating a task.
Eliminates confusion, prevents rework. And then there's the 1.3.1 rule. For every problem, require 3 potential solutions and a recommendation. It's like a problem-solving boot camp for your team.
I love that one. It's all about empowering them to think critically and come up with solutions.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked systems, we've talked delegation. What's next?
Now we gotta dream big.
Ah,
My friend Martell encourages us to craft a 10x vision. And this isn't just about business goals, it's about your team, your empire, your lifestyle. Thinking exponentially, envisioning tenfold achievements.
10x vision. I like the sound of that. So how do we translate this grand vision into something actionable?
That's where the preloaded year comes in. Plan your year strategically. Identify those 3 to 5 crucial activities, those big rocks that will have the biggest impact. Schedule those first and protect those time blocks like a mama bear protecting her cubs.
Because once those big rocks are in place, everything else falls into place.
Exactly. There's always room for the pebbles, sand, and water of life once those big rocks are secured.
Speaking of those smaller things, we can't forget about the power of non-effort time. Those little pockets of time that often go to waste.
Commuting, running errands, Martell suggests leveraging those moments to do things that nourish your mind or contribute to your goals.
Turning wasted time into opportunities for growth and rejuvenation. I like it. Okay, so with all this planning and structure, is there any room left for spontaneity?
Funny you should ask that. Martell actually argues that structure can enhance creativity. It's like decluttering your mind. When you're not bogged down by all those little tasks and to-dos, you create space for inspiration to strike.
So it's not about being rigid, it's about finding that balance between structure and flexibility.
Precisely. Make time for activities that spark your creativity. Those art classes for the mind that keep you sharp and inspired. And remember, delegation is key. But instead of just empowering our teams, Martell encourages us to enable them.
Provide clear instructions, expectations, and systems. Set them up for success.
Exactly. And communication is key. Engage in those clearing conversations. Address issues directly and respectfully, even when it's uncomfortable. Create a safe space for feedback where your team feels comfortable sharing their thoughts.
Two-way street, right. Leaders need to be open to feedback too, even if it's not always easy to hear.
Humility, a willingness to learn and grow, those are the hallmarks of a great leader.
And all this ties into retaining top talent, which is crucial for any successful business.
Cultivate a culture of feedback and development. Invest in your team. Make them feel valued and appreciated.
And lead by example. Martell shared how his own company does a quarterly feedback exercise where everyone on the executive team provides each other with constructive criticism, highlighting both strengths and areas for improvement.
Transparency and continuous growth. Key ingredients for a thriving team. And then he brings it all back to passion. Finding that sweet spot where your talents meet your enthusiasm. He tells this incredible story about his friend Dave Crisco, who basically gave his business away to two of his employees who were passionate about creating an online gaming platform for kids.
That platform became the wildly successful Club Penguin, later acquired by Disney. It's a testament to the power of aligning your work with your passions. Okay, so we've talked about applying the buyback principle to our businesses. But what about our personal lives?
Ah, yes. Don't forget about that. The buyback principle isn't just for work, it's for life. Think outside the box. Hire a house manager. Outsource those dreaded chores.
View those expenses as investments in your well-being.
Exactly. Value your personal time as much as your business time. And don't feel guilty about it. Free yourself up to spend time with loved ones. Pursue your hobbies. Simply enjoy life.
He even talks about challenging the traditional notion of retirement, right?
Absolutely. Why wait for retirement to start living the life you want? Design a life you don't need to retire from. A life that integrates work passions and personal fulfillment.
And Martell's own life is a perfect example of that. He's built successful businesses, he's nurtured meaningful relationships, he's pursued his passions, and he continues to find joy and fulfillment in his work. So what's the big takeaway here?
The buyback principle isn't just a set of strategies, it's a mindset shift. It's about recognizing your worth, understanding your priorities, and making conscious choices about how you spend your most valuable resource, your time.
Creating a life that truly reflects who you are and what you value. And he leaves us with a powerful call to action. Dream big, get clear, and plan your year.
Turn those aspirations into concrete plans. Don't just read the book, live it. Take action to reclaim your time and invest it in a life you love.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Buy Back Your Time, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the inner game, the internal transformation that needs to happen alongside those external strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. There's often an emotional hurdle that entrepreneurs have to overcome when they start outsourcing or delegating, that feeling of guilt, like they should be able to handle everything themselves.
Right, like asking for help is a sign of weakness.
Exactly. It's almost like there's this societal pressure that tells entrepreneurs they need to be constantly hustling, sacrificing their personal lives for their businesses.
Burning the candle at both ends. And Martell really pushes back against that narrative. He makes the case that a fulfilling, well-rounded life actually makes you a better entrepreneur.
When you prioritize your well-being physically, emotionally, mentally, you show up as a better leader, a more creative thinker, a more resilient individual.
It's like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't neglect your own needs and expect to thrive in any area of your life, including your business.
He reframes self-care as an investment, not an indulgence. It's about creating a sustainable lifestyle that supports both your personal and professional goals.
And this ties back to that investment quadrant of the DROP matrix we talked about. Those activities that nourish our souls, build relationships, foster creativity, those aren't just nice to haves, they're essential.
Right, they're non-negotiables. Recognizing that investing in yourself is just as important as investing in your business.
Absolutely. And setting boundaries is a huge part of that, especially for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their work and constantly bombarded with demands.
It's tough, but he offers some great strategies. Setting designated work hours, creating a dedicated workspace, learning to say no to requests that don't align with your priorities.
Protecting your time, And he even suggests creating a not-to-do list, things you consciously avoid doing to free up time and energy for the things that truly matter.
Love that. It's about being proactive with your time instead of just reacting to whatever comes your way.
Taking control. I can imagine some listeners might be feeling a little overwhelmed at this point, thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but I'm already swamped. Where do I find the time for all this?
It's a common feeling. But remember Martell's core message. You have more time than you think.
It's about making conscious choices.
Prioritizing, aligning your actions with your vision and values.
He talks about identifying your one thing, that single activity that, if you did it consistently, would have the biggest impact on your business or personal life.
And then actually blocking out time in your schedule to dedicate to that one thing. No excuses.
Treat it like an important meeting. Incremental changes that add up over time.
He encourages embracing a mindset of continuous improvement. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress every single day.
Progress over perfection.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he quotes Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
So true growth and progress are ongoing journeys. There will be bumps in the road, but the important thing is to keep moving forward. Keep learning. Keep refining your approach.
He's a big advocate for that test and learn approach. Experiment, adapt, adjust view failure not as a setback, but as valuable data.
A learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Buy Back Your Time, it's clear that this book is about so much more than just time management. It's really a guide to designing a life of intention, purpose fulfillment.
It's about reclaiming your time and investing it in a way that aligns with your passions, your values, your aspirations, creating a life you don't need to escape from.
A life you love. And what really struck me was how Martell blends practical advice with inspiring stories. He paints this compelling picture of what's possible when we take control of our time and our lives.
And he leaves us with a powerful message. You have the power to create a life that reflects your vision and your values. Don't let time just slip away. Take ownership of it, cherish it, and invest it wisely.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you have more time than you think. You have the power to create a life you love. And it all starts with taking that first step.
Until next time, folks, keep learning,
Yeah.
keep growing, and keep investing in your most valuable asset, your time.